Hi, it's Jenny Lamorgan from Lean Into Green, and I'm excited to be here with my guest today, Simran Sethi. And before I tell you more about Simran, I'm going to give you a little introduction to Lean Into Green for those of you listening for the first time. I'm a green entrepreneur and owner of greenwomanstore.com, and I'm always looking for new ways to just lean in a little deeper to going green. And I've learned a lot from these green lifestyle experts, and I know you'll be glad you've listened in. So we're going to learn about how going green enriches our lives in many ways, our health, our wealth, and our happiness. And you will experience with these interviews more of the wholeness of going green and how it affects us personally and collectively and domestically and globally, and you'll deepen your relationship with the earth. So it's all about us learning from experts in this field and how exciting their work is, and all the good news that's out there for us to just absorb and incorporate into our lives. So I'd like to introduce Simran Sethi. She is an award-winning journalist, strategist, and educator who teaches and reports on sustainability, the environment, and social media for social change. Simran has been awarded many titles. She is called the Environmental Messenger, and she is one of the 20 most influential women in green. Simran is an eco-hero of the planet and an environmental woman of impact. She is a former environmental correspondent for NBC News, and Simran is dedicated to a redefinition of environmentalism that uses innovative forms of engagement and includes voices from the prairie, from the urban core, and the global community. Welcome, Simran Sethi, and thank you very much for joining us here at Lean Into Green.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
All right, and you have talked a lot about the gendered brain, and so many of the women I've interviewed have as well. So we're here today with you to deepen our understanding of how empathy and the connection that women have long been associated with have such an important role in sustainable development. So tell us what you call the gendered brain and some examples of how the gendered brain is most compelling, and as well as for women in business and leaders in all of these green technologies and women in general.
Well, I think it's critical to remember that sustainability, as it is largely defined, which comes from the World Commission on Environment and Development definition, is to live in a way, to develop in a way that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So it's about taking care of ourselves today and doing so in a way that doesn't compromise anyone else's ability to do that in the future. And the person who chaired that committee was a woman named Harlem Gro Brundtland, and the former Norwegian prime minister, and she sort of set this trend in motion of thinking about sustainability. We can also look at eco-heroes who have been so influential in how we operate today, including Rachel Carson. Her research on persistent toxins in the environment have transformed, all kinds of policy that we see now. And we're fighting very hard to get better legislation in place now, but that the beginnings of these things really started with women. And so I think there is this idea that what I put forward is this idea of the gender brain, which is like this starts in a deep place, and it's part of our physiology, but it's also part of our psychology, and it's also part of our sociology. So I want people to remember that as well, that women's higher levels of empathy and altruism and personal responsibility make them more interested in the environment, but it's not only as a way to protect themselves and their families, but also other people. And what neuropsychiatrist Luann Brizendine has said is that it starts in the womb, that after 8 weeks in utero, all children's brains appear exactly the same, right? They're female. Female is nature's default setting. And it's only after a surge of testosterone that boys' brains begin to look male. And what she suggests is that the reason little girls may be better at playing together is brain wiring, that, that we girls develop verbal abilities at a younger age, and we may be able to negotiate sharing better than boys. And so just as little boys and little girls act differently, adult men and women act differently as well. And male business owners are much more likely to prefer what has come to be known as left brain thinking, characterized by logics and facts and hierarchy. And women also use they use their left brain, but they also use their right brains, which is characterized by values, intuition, relationships, and creativity. So I don't want to give the impression that women are all soft and fuzzy and men are, out there sort of being ambitious and operating within these hierarchies. What we find is that women tend to use their left and right brains equally. So that we want to focus on what's important to us, which is our values, and we also want to build relationships alongside of facts and logic. And I think that's critically important to remember, that women tend to foster what we call co-opetition, which is sharing knowledge and expertise with competitors to make the whole field stronger, to make the whole field more sustainable, more ecological, and more equitable. So to me, there is certainly a connection that can be found in the very essence of who we are, and that it's critically important to view this as an asset and to understand that sustainability and the support of the environment they're part of who we are. These cares are something that we should embrace, and that these are areas that we flourish in. So we shouldn't just embrace them. We should seek to be leaders within this space.
And I know that in a lot of the environment and development work internationally, they have found that women are the closest to the resources. They are the ones that are gathering the water. They're the ones that are gathering the wood, and they know so much about what's going on with the environment, but until of late, they were not included in any of the strategies for going forward. So I think what you're saying is critical for all of us to understand how important our role is, not only in interacting with the environment, but also in knowing how to go forward.
Exactly.
And what you're saying too is that we're in relationship with each other. We're in relationship with sustainable movement. We're in relationship with resources. And so talk to us a little bit about how the female gendered brain fits into sustainability. We're trying to find a way to have a bigger voice and ways that we can affect it sustainably. So.
Well, I would say I would like to touch upon what you just said as a response to your query, which is we are closer to these things. Women, tend to be in the home in greater frequency than men. 70% of farmers throughout the world, the majority of farmers are women. 70% are smallholder farmers, I should say, and the majority of those are women. So women are absolutely the ones closest to the earth, closest to these concerns, and closest to, in some instances, the financial resources within the home. So what I mean by that is that we are incredibly influential in terms of purchasing decisions made within the home. And it's incredibly, I think, important to recognize that a lot of this transformation, a lot of this change starts right there. One of my favorite heroes, which I know is a little bit of a cheesy term, but I actually really love it, is Judy Wicks, who co-founded the Business Alliance for Local Living Economies. And she also started in her home a bakery. She was baking muffins out of her house. And that has transformed over time into a restaurant that is known as the White Dog Cafe in Philadelphia. That cafe is not simply a place where you purchase food. It's a place where you come together as community. She offers a discount to people who bring seniors in with them for meals. They have communal tables. They have a regular roster of speakers that come in to speak on all kinds of issues, ranging from social and environmental justice to human rights to all kinds of issues that are important on a local and global scale. And what she's trying to do is forge community. And she's doing it not only in a localized fashion right there in Philadelphia, but she's created what she calls the Black Cat, which is a shop next door where she's supporting artisanal products and producers from all over the world and working with women's cooperatives to advance sustainability in these places as well. So she's trying to take the idea of a localized economic system and say, how can we leverage that in a globalized era? And the way she's doing that is to source out products that are produced using local materials by small-scale producers in, that are largely women's collectives, and supporting them by bringing them into these other global contexts and saying, we're going to pay you a fair wage, we're going to promote your products, we're going to create a market for these goods so you can continue to sustain yourself. So I think a critical part of sustainability is understanding access to capital and access to resources. So the resources are financial resources, natural resources, human resources, but these are what have to come together for us to move forward. And that, the interconnected approach that women tend to foster is one that is very amenable to this kind of multi-stream thinking. Research shows that women are more likely when making a decision to not only, get advice from experts within the field, but to also foster, solicit advice from people who are outside of the field and the people who will be affected by the decision. So women are communicators. Because more of our brain is devoted to language and communication with strong left brain language abilities, we tend to put strong emotional attachments to language. So the way we communicate and the way we move in the world is quite different. Yet despite all of these extraordinary leadership qualities that we possess, we're not represented in upper leadership positions as much as we should be. And so that's, I think, the critical piece that we need to foster is understanding a holistic approach to what sustainability means, to what environmental engagement means, to what engaging with our ecosystem means, and working to support women in positions of power and put more women in positions of power. There was a study that examined companies' environmental and social and governance performances, and they found that companies that had one or more women on their board were significantly more likely to have improved sustainability practices. And the co-author of that study was a woman named Kelly McElhaney, who's an assistant professor at the University of California, Berkeley's Haas School of Business. And she says, this isn't a women's or men's issue. It's a collective and it's a business opportunity. And so in order to expand female board members, Kelly McElhaney said that we need to do more research. We need to build a pipeline of women to serve on corporate boards. We need to foster a business community of people who will sponsor these women. And we need to train business leaders of all genders to be change agents. So I think when we extrapolate that out to the bigger question of sort of how do we get involved and how do we do this, it's about educating ourselves, and it's about empowering ourselves and providing mentorship and supporting other women along the way.
And that's really important too, the leadership issue. One of the things we do at Green Women's Store and why we sell women-made products is because of the studies that have shown that when the resources are directed toward the women, in this case meaning money, the whole community benefits, everybody benefits. And I think it's because what you're saying is that we think in a more holistic way. We include everybody in our decision making and in our philanthropic actions. Where women are more philanthropic. At least that's what the studies are showing. So when you talked about Grow Brundtland, I was doing environment and development work when Grow first started talking about sustainability, and in the beginning we really didn't know what that word meant. But I was at that time working with Indigenous people, and their perspective for everything that they do was taking into consideration the next 7 generations. And to me, that was sustainability. So I was comfortable with this word from the beginning. What is your experience with Indigenous cultures around the world? I think it feels like we're coming full circle with our common ancient cultural and spiritual roots in nature.
Well, I'm of Indian origin, so I feel like I've been closer to some of that wisdom my whole life. I don't do work with any particular Indigenous communities, so I don't have any particular comments to that point, but I do think that earth-centered, matriarchal societies have demonstrated that they're the ones who have some of the highest, awareness and consciousness around environmental issues. The challenge, of course, becomes how that pushes up against development, as you mentioned earlier. It's very hard to make decisions that are, in support of natural resources over the long term when you're hungry in the short term. And there's a potentially destructive decision that can feed your family today. So I think these are the things. This is why I strive to really focus on looking at sustainability as a dynamic construct. Some of the visuals that people reference are like a triple bottom line or a 3-legged stool of people, planet, and profit, and I think it really needs to be a much more dynamic construct, because when we think about, even within our own lives, whether or not we do international development work, that we can understand that it's a constant negotiation of, what makes sense for our budget today, what makes sense for our time today, what makes sense for our values today, and that we are always refining what this means and always hopefully moving toward the best solution for ourselves and for our families and our communities, but that to me, that this should be something that's in constant flow, that we are constantly thinking about this and making decisions. I think we've all been faced with this at any farmer's market where you're like, okay, this isn't organic, but I know this farmer and it's local, and I know that he or she used some pesticides or herbicides on this. Like, what do I do? Do I want the large agribusiness organic product, or do I want this product from my local farmer? And and that we make decisions that make sense for us and for our context. But that what I think is critically important is to ensure that we have enough information to make informed decisions.
Right, and that's where the education piece comes in. It's so critical everywhere at every level. So so you have written and talked about ethical markets and growing a green economy. Do you see us moving in this direction?
I do. I think the consciousness that we have now around what sustainability means, what resource conservation means, not just in the abstract, but in tangible ways, is really unprecedented. Of course, there have always been environmental organizations dedicated to preserving and conserving our natural resources. But what I'm suggesting is now it is slowly becoming more embedded in our lives. And and I say this from a very first world perspective. As I mentioned, I'm Indian. I've gone to India my whole life. I am well aware of the fact that this is not a choice or a luxury for many people, that they choose to be conservative with their resources because they have no other means of surviving. But when we are presented with the choice, the fact that consumers are willing to pay a price premium for products that are made in a fair and just manner, that people are more concerned about what's going into their bodies, whether it be natural care products or foods, that we're concerned about organics, that the majority of Americans want their food labeled in regards to genetically modified organisms, that we are demanding information. And the reason we're asking for this information is because we want to make decisions that are good for ourselves and for our families and communities. So I see this as a very positive change, and I think that businesses are responding accordingly.
25 years ago, when Grow Brundtland was beginning the sustainability movement, we could not conceive that corporations would move in this direction. It just didn't seem possible. And we're seeing it today. So many better products out there because of consumer pressure and because folks are wanting safer products. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time to see this shift happening at every level. So thank you for talking more about the green economy. I think we're sharing so much good information for our listeners that they can feel stronger about the future. And I think you're feeling hopeful as well. That they can feel
empowered, that the way we continue to encourage businesses to do better is to make informed decisions with our dollars, is to consider in every purchase we make whether this helps or harms people and the planet, and to, if we have the means, to be willing to sacrifice or spend a little bit more or, remember to put some, use the reusables. I mean, that these aren't necessarily default positions, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't do them and that they won't come over time easily and that they aren't incredibly important. Because the aggregate effect of all of these decisions is what got us to this place right now, with climate change, with resource depletion. And it's only going to be a collective effort that helps solve these problems.
All right. Can you give us some ideas how we as individuals can help to achieve sustainability, some actions that we can take within our own homes, our families, and our businesses?
Well, it's really what I just said. It's considering what you're purchasing. It's asking yourself the question about what kind of impact this has, not only on you, but on the people who created the products, the animals that went into it, the kinds of inputs that are part of getting that product to you. I would say, for me, the shorthand is to really choose local products whenever possible, and to support businesses that are part of my local economy. I also think if we are in positions of power, to actively seek out ways to support women and encourage and bring up women within those same places, to provide mentorship, to continue and encourage increased board membership for women, fight for equal pay for women. I mean, it's astonishing to me that we're, in 2013 and women are still not paid the same amount of money as men, compensated the same way for work. So that the fight isn't over. I was a women's studies major at Smith College, graduated in 1992. And now we seem to be in some sort of post-feminist era, but we're still fighting for some of the most basic rights around reproductive freedom, around equal pay for equal work. And these things are, I think, should not be overlooked. Sometimes the assumption is when we see women in positions of power, like, oh, we've gotten there. We leaned in, we're good. But there's still a lot of work to do. And I think the work starts with being cognizant of who we are. And as Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook, has mentioned, is really being aware of our own power, that we have agency, even when we're in the most restricted of situations and environments. If we can recognize what we can do instead of simply focusing on what we cannot do, that there is some small amount of agency within that. And it's not easy to advocate for ourselves, but the only way we're going to get raises, the only way we're going to get better products, the only way we're going to get some of these toxins out of our natural resources and clean up our act is if we demand it. And we have those voices, and we are inherently better communicators and sympathetic, compassionate communicators, and it's time that we leverage that and continue to build our community and grow our power and make this planet a safer, cleaner one for ourselves and as you said, for 7 generations forward.
Thank you very much, Simran. Any last thoughts that you want to leave us with today?
I think that's it. I think it's just like to remember that sustainability is about our relationship with our work and our community and our planet and with each other. And like all important relationships, it's messy and complex, and it involves compromises and trade-offs. And that what we have to remember is that this is not a fixed state, and that we're in a constant dynamic state of navigating our way through this, what Mary Oliver calls this one wild and precious life, and that we're in it together, and that when we come together, we really can work to solve these problems.
And the rewards are amazing.
The rewards are amazing, indeed.
Yes, and we're beginning to see the rewards of our change in direction, and it feels like a very blessed world these days.
Yeah.
All right. We have links to Simran's website. It is simransethi.com, and that's SIMRANSETHI, simransethi.com. And we also have a link to Simran's talk at St. Catherine University School of Business and Professional Studies. Her talk is Women's Work, the Role of Women in Sustainability. And so you'll want to listen to that for sure. So we thank you very much, Simran Sethi, for giving us all a better understanding of sustainability and our uniquely valuable and absolutely necessary role as women. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
All right. So, leaning into green, this is a journey that's a personal journey, and it's certainly a collective one. And I hope that you will take time to lean into green a little deeper in your own lives. And I hope we've inspired you today to go green in many new and rewarding ways. So thank you very much for being with us today. And thank you, Simran Sethi, for all of your good work in sustainable development. Thank you, and bye-bye for now.